The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room Daniel Hartley had ever seen. It stretched so far that the walls disappeared into shadow, and the ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. 17 different alien species sat on floating platforms arranged in a circle, each platform glowing with soft light. The air smelled strange, like copper and flowers mixed together. And the temperature kept shifting as climate controls tried to keep everyone comfortable. Daniel stood at the center of the room on a small circular stage. He wore his best suit, dark blue with the Earth flag pinned to his chest. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. Behind him stood Lieutenant Karen Wells, his aide and translator, though the universal translation system made her job mostly symbolic these days. He had practiced this speech 100 times. Earth had been part of the Galactic Compact for 187 years now. They had followed every rule, paid every fee, and never caused any trouble. It was time. The leaders back home had decided to ask for something more. It was time to ask for respect. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Daniel began, his voice echoing through the massive space. I come before you today on behalf of Earth and all of humanity. We have been faithful members of this compact for nearly 2 centuries. We have contributed to scientific research, participated in cultural exchanges, and honored every treaty we have signed. He paused and looked around at the alien faces. Some he could read, others were impossible to understand. The Karathi had hard shells and clicking mandibles. The Velinari were tall and made of something that looked like blue crystal. The Salathi had too many eyes and moved like water. Today, I formally request that Earth be granted full membership status in the Galactic Council, including a seat on the Security Directorate. For 3 heartbeats, the chamber was completely silent. Daniel allowed himself a small moment of hope. Maybe they would take the request seriously. Maybe they would see how hard humanity had worked. Then the laughter started. It began with High Counselor Dexven of the Karathi hegemony. His mandibles clicked together in a rapid pattern that the translator turned into deep, mocking laughter. The sound spread like a wave across the chamber. Soon, nearly every platform was filled with the sound of alien amusement. Daniel felt his face grow hot. Behind him, he heard Karen take a sharp breath. Dexven raised one of his clawed hands, and the laughter slowly died down. Forgive us, Ambassador Hartley, he said, though his tone made it clear he was not sorry at all. Your request simply caught us by surprise. The humans want a seat on the Security Directorate? That is correct, Daniel replied, keeping his voice calm. The Security Directorate oversees the military protection of over 400 civilized worlds, Dexven continued. Its members command fleets of thousands of warships. They control weapons that can crack planets in half. He leaned forward, his many eyes focusing on Daniel. Your species has been traveling between stars for barely 200 years. You have no significant fleet. Your largest ship, I believe you call it the Endurance, would barely qualify as a patrol vessel in Karathi space. The Velinari delegate spoke next. Her voice was like wind chimes, beautiful but cold. Perhaps the humans could serve refreshments at our meetings. They seem suited for that level of responsibility. More laughter filled the chamber. Daniel felt Karen's hand touch his elbow briefly. A silent message of support. Counselor Yeren of the Salathi Combine joined in. She was smaller than the others, but her voice carried weight. We appreciate your enthusiasm, Ambassador. Truly, we do. But there is a natural order to things. Young species must learn their place. You cannot expect to sit at the table of those who have ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Earth has honored every agreement, Daniel said, refusing to let his voice shake. We have paid tariffs that take a significant portion of our economy. We have limited our military as required. We have never broken a single rule. And we are grateful for your obedience, Dexvin replied. It is good that you understand your position. But obedience is expected, not rewarded. A pet that does not bite its master does not earn a seat at the dinner table. The word hit Daniel like a physical blow. Pet. They saw humanity as pets. We have contributed to 17 joint scientific ventures. Daniel pressed on. Our researchers helped solve the Velinari energy crisis. Our engineers improved the efficiency of the standard jump drive by 4%. Small contributions, the Velinari delegate said dismissively. Appreciated, but not significant. A child who helps with household chores does not become head of the family. Dexvin straightened on his platform, clearly ready to end this conversation. Ambassador Hartley, your request is denied. This is not up for debate or negotiation. Earth may continue as an associate member of the Compact, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. If you wish to be considered for full membership, return in another 1,000 years. Perhaps by then, your species will have matured. I call for a formal vote, Daniel said. It was his right under council rules, and he would use it. Dexvin sighed, a sound like steam escaping a broken pipe. Very well. All in favor of granting Earth full membership and a seat on the Security Directorate. Silence. All opposed? Every platform lit up. Every single species voted against Earth. The motion fails, Dexvin announced. Unanimously. This session is concluded. The platforms began to move, carrying delegates toward exits on all sides of the chamber. Some of them were still laughing. Others simply ignored Daniel and Corinne as if they were invisible. Daniel stood frozen on the central stage. He had failed. Not only had he failed, but he had been humiliated in front of the entire galaxy. Every word of this session would be recorded and distributed to every member world. Everyone would see how the Great Galactic Council had laughed at humanity's request. Karen stepped closer to him. Sir, we should go. He nodded slowly and turned toward the exit. His legs felt heavy, like he was walking through deep water. The chamber seemed even larger now, even more empty-eyed, as they walked through the ornate corridors of the council station. Past statues of alien heroes and paintings of ancient victories, Karen finally spoke again. What do we tell them back home? What do we say? Daniel stopped walking. He turned to look at her, and she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. It was not defeat. It was not sadness. It was something harder, something sharper. We tell them the truth, he said. Every single word of it. We show them the recording. We let them see how the council laughed. We let them hear what they called us. And then what? Daniel started walking again, faster now. His shoulders were straight. His jaw was set. And then we let humanity decide what to do about it. The formal withdrawal notice arrived at the Galactic Council exactly 12 hours after the humiliating session. It was delivered electronically, a simple document of 3 paragraphs. No flowery language, no diplomatic softening, just cold facts. Earth was leaving the Compact. All treaties were canceled. All agreements were void. All diplomatic relations were suspended. Effective immediately. High Counselor Dexvin read it 3 times before he believed it was real. He sat in his private office, the notice glowing on his screen, and tried to understand what he was seeing. This is unprecedented, his advisor said, standing nervously by the door. No species has ever withdrawn from the Compact. Not in 3,000 years. Can they do this? Dexvin demanded. Is it legal? Yes, High Counselor. The founding charter allows for voluntary withdrawal with proper notice. The humans have provided notice. They are within their rights. Dexvin made a sound of disgust. Then let them go. What do we care? The humans were nothing but a minor annoyance anyway. Without our trade networks, without our protection, They will collapse within a year. Of course, High Counselor. And when they come crawling back, begging to rejoin, we will make them pay twice the tariffs. 3 times. They will regret this foolishness. The advisor bowed and left the room. Dexvin turned back to his window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in a tiny corner of the galaxy, the humans were throwing away everything they had. He almost felt sorry for them. The year passed slowly for the council, but it passed. Trade continued. Wars were fought and ended. New species were discovered and evaluated. Life went on as it always had, with the great powers making decisions and the smaller species following along. But something was missing. At first, no one noticed. Human trade vessels stopped arriving at council stations, but human trade had never been significant anyway. Human diplomats vacated their embassies, but they had never had much influence. Human scientists withdrew from joint research projects, but their contributions have been minor. Then people started to pay attention. What are the humans doing? Councillor Yiren asked during a routine session. We have not heard anything from their sector in months. They are isolating themselves, Dexvin replied dismissively. Hiding in shame. They will come back when their economy collapses. But our intelligence networks have gone dark, Yiren pressed. Every probe we send toward their sector simply vanishes. Every spy we plant stops reporting. It is as if they have built a wall around their entire region of space. Let them hide. What does it matter? But 6 months later, it started to matter. The Karathi merchant fleet reported strange readings at the edge of human space. Energy signatures that did not match any known technology. The signatures appeared and then vanished, too quick to track. A Volonari science vessel disappeared near the human border. Then another. Then a military patrol. They are destroying our ships, the Volonari delegate accused in an emergency session. We do not know that, Dexvin countered, though his voice was uncertain. There are natural hazards in that region. Ion storms. Gravity wells. 3 ships in 2 months? All near human space? This is not coincidence. The council debated what to do. Some wanted to send a fleet to investigate. Others warned that this could be seen as an act of war. In the end, they did nothing. They sent strongly worded messages into the void. The messages went unanswered. 18 months after Earth's withdrawal, Dexvin called a private session of the major powers. Only the Karathi, the Volonari, and the Salathi attended. No records were kept. What are they doing in there? Dexvin demanded. Our best intelligence operatives have failed. Our most advanced sensors have failed. The humans have built some kind of barrier around their entire territory, and we cannot see through it. Perhaps they have collapsed, Yiren suggested. Their economy was never strong. Without our trade, they may have fallen into chaos. The barrier could be automated, still functioning after their civilization died. That is what I thought at first, the Volonari delegate said. But automated systems do not evolve. The barrier is changing, adapting. Every time we find a weakness, it closes before we can exploit it. Someone is watching. Someone is adjusting. Then what do you suggest? The room fell silent. No one had an answer. From the shadows at the back of the chamber, a voice spoke. You made a terrible mistake. Everyone turned. Elder veteran of the Mandari stepped forward. He was ancient, even by galactic standards. His body frail, but his eyes still sharp. The Mandari were the oldest species in the council, and Vetherin was the oldest of them all. He rarely spoke at meetings. When he did, people listened. The humans are young, Vetherin continued. Primitive by our standards, weak. But in my long life, I have learned that youth often brings something the old have forgotten. Hunger, ambition, the willingness to risk everything for a chance at greatness. They are barely spacefaring. Dexman protested. What can they possibly do to threaten us? Vethrin walked slowly to the window. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. I have seen empires rise and fall, he said quietly. I have watched species climb from the mud to conquer galaxies. And I have learned one truth that never changes. Never humiliate a young species. Never make them feel small. Because when they prove themselves, and they always do, they will remember every insult, every laugh, every moment of disrespect. He turned to face the council members. You laughed at the humans. You called them pets. You told them to wait 1,000 years for basic respect. And now they have gone silent. He shook his head slowly. In my experience, silence is far more dangerous than shouting. The humans are not hiding. They are not dying. They are building. Building what? Yeren asked. Vethrin's ancient eyes were sad. I do not know. But I fear that when they finally break their silence, we may not enjoy what they have to say. The room was quiet for a long time after that. No one had any arguments. No one had any plans. They simply sat in silence, staring at the stars, wondering what was coming. Far away, beyond the barrier that no sensor could pierce, the forges of Earth burned day and night. Ships took shape in orbital factories. Weapons were tested in the deep darkness between stars. 8 billion humans worked together with a single purpose, driven by a memory that burned hotter than any star. The memory of laughter. The memory of being called pets. The memory of being told to wait 1,000 years. They would not wait. Not even close. The distress signal came without warning. It was early morning on Karathi Prime, the homeworld of the most powerful species in the galaxy. High Counselor Dexvan was in his residence, preparing for another routine day of politics and paperwork. Then, his personal communicator started screaming. High Counselor, you need to come to the command center. Immediately. Dexvan had never heard that tone in his military advisor's voice before. Fear. Real fear. He arrived at the Planetary Defense Command Center 20 minutes later, still wearing his informal robes. The massive room was filled with screens and consoles, staffed by hundreds of military officers. Every single one of them was staring at the main display with expressions of disbelief. Report, Dexvan demanded. What is happening? The sensor operator turned to face him. Her shell had gone pale, a sign of extreme stress in Karathi physiology. Unknown vessels detected at the edge of the system, High Counselor. They came out of subspace approximately 15 minutes ago. What species? How many ships? The operator swallowed. Human, High Counselor. They are all human. Dexman felt something cold settle in his chest. How many? The count is still climbing. 100. 200. 500 contacts and rising. He pushed through the crowd of officers to get closer to the main screen. The display showed the outer edge of the Karathi system, a region of space that should have been empty except for a few defense platforms. Instead, it was filling with red dots. Each dot was a ship. 1,000 contacts, the operator announced, her voice cracking. 1,500. 2,000. High Counselor, I have never seen anything like this. The fleet emerged from subspace like a tide of steel and fire. Ship after ship appeared, forming into precise formations that stretched across millions of kilometers. These were not the tiny destroyers Earth had been allowed to build. These were warships, massive and deadly, covered in weapons that glowed with barely contained energy. What class are those vessels? Dexvan asked. Unknown, High Counselor. They do not match anything in our database. The smallest ones are roughly cruiser-sized. The larger ones... The operator paused, running calculations. The larger ones are bigger than our dreadnoughts. Much bigger. That is impossible. The humans do not have the technology. They do not have the resources. With respect, High Counselor, they clearly do. Then something else appeared on the sensors. Something so large that the display had to zoom out to show it properly. At the center of the human formation, a vessel emerged from subspace that dwarfed everything around it. It was shaped like a blade, sleek and predatory, and it kept coming and coming, more of its length appearing every second. "What is that?" Dexvin whispered. The operator's claws were shaking as she read the sensor data. Approximately 12 kilometers in length. We are reading power signatures that should not be possible. That single ship is outputting more energy than our entire home star. 12 kilometers. Their largest dreadnought was barely 2. The fleet stopped advancing once it reached the outer defense perimeter. Thousands of ships hung motionless in space, weapons powered but not firing. They were waiting. "They have destroyed our orbital defense platforms," another officer reported. "No shots fired. They just sent some kind of pulse that shut everything down. Can we contact them?" Before anyone could answer, the main screen flickered. A communication request appeared, originating from the massive flagship at the center of the human formation. "Accept it," Dexvin ordered. The screen changed to show the interior of a command bridge. It was bright and clean, filled with human officers moving efficiently at their stations. In the center, sitting in a command chair, was a human woman in a crisp naval uniform. She had dark hair pulled back tight, and her expression was calm, almost pleasant. "High Counselor Dexvin," she said. "I am Admiral Lisa Chen of the United Earth Navy. I believe you have met Ambassador Hartley. He asked to be present for this moment." The image widened to show a man standing beside the Admiral's chair. Daniel Hartley looked older than he had 2 years ago. His face was harder, his eyes colder. But he smiled when he saw Dexvin on the screen. "Ambassador Hartley," Dexvin said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "This is quite an entrance. I am no longer an ambassador, High Counselor. Earth has no need for ambassadors anymore." He stepped closer to the camera. "Admiral Chun and I are here to deliver a message. But first, she wanted me to remind you of something you said to me almost 2 years ago." "What message? What is the meaning of this show of force?" Daniel's smile faded. His voice became cold. "You said children do not sit at the adults' table. You told us to come back in 1,000 years when we had matured." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We decided not to wait that long." Admiral Chun touched a control on her chair. "High Counselor, you are currently looking at the 3rd Fleet of the United Earth Navy. This is approximately 1/5 of our total military strength. The other 4 fleets are positioned at strategic locations throughout Council space. 1/5. This impossible armada was only 1/5 of what the humans had built. In case you were considering a military response," Chun continued, "I should inform you that the vessel I am commanding is called the Unconquered. She carries enough antimatter to sterilize every planet in your home system. My orders allow me to use that capability if I deem it necessary." Dexvin's mind raced. The Karathi military was powerful, one of the strongest in the galaxy. But against this? Against weapons that should not exist? Ships that should not be possible? "What do you want?" he asked. Daniel stepped forward again. "There will be an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Every species, every delegate. It will happen in exactly 6 hours. Admiral Chun's fleet will provide escort for any council members who need transportation. And if we refuse to attend?" Admiral Chun answered that question. "Then the 3rd Fleet will begin systematic destruction of military targets throughout Karathi space, starting with your orbital shipyards and ending with your planetary defense grid. You will be completely defenseless by the end of the day." "You would not dare." Daniel laughed. It was a cold sound, nothing like the laughter that had filled the council chamber 2 years ago. We spent 18 months building this fleet, High Counselor. We broke every treaty, violated every agreement, and poured everything we had into becoming strong enough to never be laughed at again. Do you really think we went through all of that just to make empty threats? Dexman had no answer. 6 hours, Daniel repeated. Be there. Bring everyone. And High Counselor? I would suggest coming with an open mind, because the galaxy is about to change, whether you like it or not. The screen went dark. Dexman stood motionless in the command center, surrounded by his officers, staring at the sensor display. The red dots were still there, thousands of them, waiting patiently in the darkness of space. The children had come back early, and they had brought their own table. The news of victory in the asteroid belt spread across Earth like wildfire. For the first time since the death sentence had been announced, people began to hope. In cities around the world, crowds gathered to watch the footage of Concorde ships burning. They cheered and cried and held each other, believing that maybe, just maybe, they might survive. President Maria Vasquez knew the truth was more complicated. She stood in the war room beneath the Rocky Mountains, studying the holographic display that showed the current state of the battle. The asteroid belt victory had destroyed less than 200 enemy ships. The main fleet still numbered over 9,000. We hurt them, General Dunn said. We proved they can bleed. We also made them angry, Maria replied. And we showed them what we are capable of. They will not underestimate us again. She turned to the young officer standing at the edge of the room. Lieutenant Samantha Wells, what is the status of our planetary defenses? Samantha stepped forward. She was only 28 years old, but she had helped design the defense systems that might save Earth. The orbital platforms are fully armed. We have 340 ships in position around the planet. The ground-based missile batteries are ready to fire. And the shield? Samantha hesitated. Dr. Martinez reports that the planetary shield is operational, but it has never been tested against weapons fire. We do not know if it will hold. The planetary shield was humanity's greatest secret. For the past 5 years, construction crews have been building massive generators on every continent, hiding them beneath mountains and under oceans where Concorde sensors could not detect them. The technology was based on stolen alien designs, modified and improved by human engineers who did not understand why certain things were supposed to be impossible. The Concorde said a planetary shield could not be built. The power requirements were too great. The engineering challenges were too complex. No species had ever managed to protect an entire world with a single unified barrier. Humanity had done it anyway, because no one had told them they could not. On board the Concorde flagship, High Admiral Vexrath studied the reports from the asteroid belt battle with growing concern. The Varath commander had lived for 3,000 years and had commanded fleets in dozens of conflicts. Never before had an enemy surprised it so completely. They sacrificed their own mining infrastructure, Vexrath said, its crystalline body flickering with confused colors. Decades of work, resources worth billions of credits, all destroyed to kill less than 200 ships. This is not logical behavior. A Methrony officer approached. The Methrony were tall, thin beings with silver skin and 6 arms. They were the finest engineers in the galaxy, and they had been trying to understand human technology since the first contact 15 years ago. High Admiral, we have analyzed the weapons used in the attack. The fusion devices were primitive, barely better than what our ancestors used 10,000 years ago. But the delivery method, the timing, the placement, it was brilliant. They turned our shields against us by overwhelming them with volume instead of power. Can our shields be modified to prevent this from happening again? Yes, High Admiral. But it will take time. At least 6 hours to update all ships in the fleet. Vexrath made the sound that served as a Varath sigh, Then we slow our approach. We do not engage until the modifications are complete. Humanity has surprised us once. It will not happen again. But humans were already working on their next surprise dot in a small ship hidden among the debris of the asteroid belt. Pilot Amy Torres ran final checks on her engines. She was 31 years old, a former cargo hauler who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. The quantum feedback generator sat in her cargo hold, a device that looked like a collection of spare parts held together with tape and hope. Sparrow. This is endurance. Admiral Brooks's voice crackled through her communicator. Status report. All systems green, Admiral. The device is stable. I am ready to proceed. There was a pause on the other end. Amy, you know that once you activate that device, you will be the primary target for every ship in their fleet. I know. The odds of survival are very low. Amy smiled, even though no one could see her. Admiral, the odds of humanity surviving this week were also very low. And yet here we are, still fighting. I knew what I was signing up for. Why did you volunteer for this? Amy thought about her family back on Earth. Her mother lived in a small house in Colorado, where she tended a garden and complained about the weather. Her younger brother was in college, studying to be a doctor. Her niece was 3 years old and had just learned to ride a bicycle. Because someone has to, she said simply. I would rather die fighting than live knowing I did not try. Katie was silent for a long moment. Good luck, Sparrow. We will do everything we can to get you home. I know you will, Admiral. Sparrow out. Amy settled back in her seat and watched the Concorde fleet through her sensors. 9,000 ships, each one carrying weapons that could level a city. They were slowing down, probably making adjustments after the asteroid belt defeat. That was good. It gave her more time to get into position. She thought about what the Varath had said at the council meeting. They called humanity a threat because humans were aggressive and unpredictable. They said humans did not respect the natural order. They said humans destroyed everything in their path. Amy did not think that was true. Humans did not want to destroy. They wanted to survive. They wanted to protect the people they loved. They wanted to build a future for their children and their children's children. The Concorde had looked at humanity and seen monsters. Amy looked at her own species and saw something else. She saw people who would sacrifice everything for each other. She saw people who refused to accept defeat, even when defeat was certain. She saw people who loved life so much that they would fight to the death to preserve it. The galaxy thought they knew what humanity was. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. Amy Torres activated her engines and began her approach toward the enemy fleet. The small ship named Sparrow flew alone into the darkness between the stars, carrying the hopes of 8 billion people and one impossible device that might just save them all. Behind her, the human fleet prepared for the final battle. Every ship was armed, every crew was ready, and every person knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of their entire species. The storm was coming, and humanity was going to meet it head-on. The Concorde fleet emerged from their holding pattern exactly 72 hours after the vote that condemned humanity to death. 9,047 ships arranged themselves in perfect formation, their shields upgraded and their weapons charged. High Admiral Vexroth stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching Earth grow larger in the viewscreen. The blue and green planet hung in the darkness of space, surrounded by a thin shell of human warships. 300 vessels stood between the Concorde and their target. It was a pitiful defense, a desperate last stand by a species that refused to accept its fate. Begin the approach, Vexroth commanded. All ships maintain formation. We finished this today. The fleet moved forward like a wall of metal and fire. Every ship in the Armada carried enough firepower to destroy a continent. Together, They could reduce Earth to a ball of molten rock in minutes. Aboard the Endurance, Admiral Katie Brooks watched the approaching fleet with cold determination. Her ship floated at the center of the human defensive line, surrounded by vessels that ranged from proper warships to converted cargo haulers armed with whatever weapons could be bolted to their hulls. All ships. "This is Admiral Brooks." She spoke into the fleet-wide channel. "In a few minutes, we will engage an enemy that outnumbers us 30 to 1. They have better weapons, better shields, and thousands of years more experience than we do." She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew. Danny Reyes stood at her side, his hand resting on the tactical console. Lieutenant Samantha Wells monitored the sensor station. Dr. Pete Holloway watched from the back of the bridge. His quantum research converted into the weapon that might save them all. "But they do not have what we have," Katie continued. "They do not have 8 billion people counting on us. They do not have families waiting at home, hoping we will find a way to protect them. They do not have the most stubborn, creative, and downright impossible species the galaxy has ever seen." Across the human fleet, crews listened in silence. Some prayed. Some held photographs of loved ones. Some simply gripped their controls and waited for the order to fight. Today we show them what humanity is made of. Today we fight for everyone we have ever loved and everyone who will come after us. Today we make history. Katie turned to Danny. "Is Sparrow in position?" "Yes, Admiral." "Amy is ready." "Then let us begin." Signal the fleet. Attack pattern Omega. The human fleet surged forward, not in a defensive formation, but in an aggressive charge directly at the heart of the Concord Armada. It was suicide by any logical measure. It was exactly what the aliens expected from the crazy, unpredictable humans. What they did not expect was the tiny ship hiding in the shadow of an asteroid. Drifting closer, while all eyes were focused on the approaching battle, Amy Torres watched her instruments and waited. The feedback generator hummed beside her, fully powered and ready to activate. She had one chance to get this right. If she moved too early, the Concorde would spot her and destroy her before she could reach effective range. If she waited too long, the human fleet would be annihilated. "Steady," she whispered to herself. Steady. The two fleets collided in a storm of weapons fire. Human missiles streaked through space, most of them deflected by Concorde shields. Alien plasma beams cut through human vessels, turning them into expanding clouds of debris. The kill ratio was exactly what everyone had predicted. 10 human ships lost for every Concorde vessel damaged. But the humans did not break. They kept fighting, kept pressing forward, kept dying so that Amy could get closer to her target. "Now," Amy said. She activated the feedback generator. The device released a pulse of energy that rippled through space at the speed of light. It touched the nearest Concorde ship and found the quantum entanglement that connected its shields to every other ship in the fleet. The pulse followed those connections, spreading from vessel to vessel like a virus through a nervous system. On every Concorde ship, alarms began to scream. Shield generators that had operated perfectly for thousands of years suddenly received conflicting commands. The quantum matrix that made them invincible turned against them, forcing every shield to absorb the feedback from every other shield. The collapse was instantaneous and total. 9,000 shields failed at the exact same moment. "All ships, weapons free." Katie shouted. The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Nuclear missiles that had been deflected harmlessly moments before now struck naked hulls. Kinetic rounds that would have bounced off shields now tore through alien metal. Every weapon humanity possessed poured into the suddenly vulnerable enemy. Concorde ships exploded by the hundreds. Vessels that had survived for centuries of galactic peace died in seconds. The flagship shuddered as impacts rocked its hull, and High Admiral Vexroth fell from its command platform. "What is happening?" The Vorath screamed. "Restore the shields. Restore them now." "We cannot," a terrified officer replied. "The system is rebooting. It will take 30 seconds. 30 seconds. An eternity in battle." But the Concorde fleet was vast, and even helpless, they were dangerous. Weapons that did not rely on shields still functioned. The flagship's main cannon, a planet killer that could crack a world in half, began to charge. "Target Earth," Vexwrath commanded. "If we die today, humanity dies with us." The cannon fired. A beam of pure destruction shot toward the blue planet, carrying enough energy to vaporize continents. Katie watched it on her sensors, knowing that there was nothing she could do to stop it. The planetary shield was their last hope, and it had never been tested. The beam struck Earth's atmosphere and stopped in the control room beneath the Swiss Alps. Dr. Beth Martinez watched her displays with tears streaming down her face. The planetary shield held firm, absorbing the attack and dispersing the energy harmlessly into space. The untested, supposedly impossible technology worked exactly as she had designed it. "Shield holding at 92%, she reported, her voice breaking. "We can take more hits. We can survive this." On the Endurance, Katie allowed herself one moment of relief before returning to the battle. The Concorde shields were coming back online. The window was closing, but they had done incredible damage, and the enemy fleet was in chaos. "All ships, fall back to Earth orbit," she ordered. "Reform the defensive line." Amy Torres had survived the initial chaos, her tiny ship lost in the confusion of battle. She watched the human fleet retreat and the Concorde ships regroup. The enemy had lost over 1,000 vessels in 30 seconds, but they still outnumbered humanity by an overwhelming margin. The shields were back. The advantage was gone, and the battle was far from over, but something had changed. The Concorde had learned that they were not invincible. They had learned that humans could hurt them, could kill them, could match their technology and find weaknesses they never knew existed. And somewhere deep in the crystalline consciousness of High Admiral Vexwrath, a new emotion was taking root. It was not anger or hatred or the cold certainty of victory. It was fear.